I mean, I can hear you guys. Welcome to episode 40.
Wow.
I couldn't hear the intro, so that's what we were chatting
Well, welcome to local public broadcast news here.
Oh man, that snuck up on me. All right.
Nice start.
Well, welcome to episode 40 Pickers Market. Jeremy, Keith, Lisa, everybody, welcome back.
Thank you.
Lisa, welcome back.
Thank you.
Feeling better?
I do.
That's good.
I handed it off to Jeremy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I sound like a bullfrog over here, so apologize in advance for that.
Maybe it'll go to Keith next.
No,
Yeah, Keith is next.
I had a minor version
Yeah.
already, so I'm good.
All right. So, since we're kind of done with the whole sports things, I'll stick with my theme of fun facts.
Okay.
So 40 was my hockey number, fun fact number one.
Nice.
Nice. Give yourself an applause on that,
Yeah,
Tyler.
yeah, I better.
The only applause he received is a hockey.
Pretty
He
much.
was just
Kidding,
struggling to
kidding.
find the right button.
You were a
Pretty
state champ, right?
Yeah.
No, I can't make fun of that.
It's a big deal in
State
Minnesota.
champ.
It's a big deal in Minnesota.
So you stopped
claim
playing
to fame.
on the highest.
Yep.
Point.
Went out on a high note.
Mhm,
Yeah.
mhm.
So the other fun facts. Fun fact number 2. We were talking about the other week. I just kind of stumbled across this one.
Oh, God.
But we were talking about Fahrenheit versus Celsius, and negative 40 degrees is when the two converge.
Converge?
And they go down at the same rate.
Tyler's not giving up on that discussion.
Edited for time. Edited for time.
We even left it out from the second.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I figure. It was and it's
Hey,
rearing
don't
its
knock
ugly
my
head
fun
again.
facts. It's fun facts about numbers aren't all that fun.
You could say, "Hey, here's facts." I don't know
Or-
if I
or-
put
or we
fun
could
in
just-
front of it.
Or we can just skip it.
Keep that skip it.
All right, last one. I thought this one was kind of interesting. 40 is the only number in English where the letters are in alphabetical order.
Who's coming up with that?
Yeah.
Tyler
I don't
is.
know.
Yeah.
ChatGPT.
I think Keith is going to celebrate 40 with a 40 ounce of malt liquor here.
Yeah.
So just be like, can we stop with the fun facts?
Let's get to the show for
Oh my gosh. All right. All right.
Fun
So,
fact is that we live in a state where Fahrenheit and Celsius converge.
Will
actually.
converge.
Yes.
Yeah.
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 This
there
is
you
the
go.
fun fact. Not fun as well, but
Did we hit? We didn't, even with wind chill, we didn't hit minus 40 though, right?
No,
We got
not
pretty
this year.
close, I think,
minus
one day.
25 or 20.
Oh, I thought there was a 30. I thought
Oh,
I saw
I
30
think there
in
was a
there.
30.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Close.
Close.
All right. Keith's ready to just come. He wants his couch back and
No.
just,
Yeah. Right.
All
Wake me
right.
up when you guys start talking
Yeah.
about something meaningful.
all right. So I think it's probably pretty obvious what my hot button is going to be for this week.
You've
But
been paying attention.
if you've been paying attention to markets, AI, DeepSeek just rattling the markets on Monday, seeing a little bit of a snapback yesterday and today. But it kind of spooked the whole AI part of the market that has been driving the market for the last 18 months. So just kind of curious, where did these guys come from? Like, we haven't heard anything about any Chinese AI developer. So how is it all of a sudden they just destroy the other AI companies out there?
Yeah, it's a little surprising. They've been around since 2023.
23, yeah.
So a little year and a half, and all of a sudden they're displacing all the big guys. I don't know. It's a little bit of a black box, obviously, what's coming out of there, but it certainly did affect the markets. Jeremy, you know any more about DeepSeek and kind of have you? I mean, you heard about it for the last year, but barely, in the background. Not, certainly,
Yeah.
any of the Nvidias and everything else we talk about with AI.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing is, I wouldn't call it destroying because they're doing something. They're just leveraging the technology that's already out there, right? And so, but the biggest change was we do it a heck of a lot cheaper than you all do,
Mhm.
which again, we've talked about this multiple times, right? Is that this exponential growth of power is just unsustainable, right? And I think that's the bigger story rather than, does DeepSeek kill anybody else? Is like now everybody has a template. Their mind is shifting, right? And saying, well, this might not be a horsepower race. This might be a different type of race going forward. This might be guerrilla warfare rather than, arms race, right? To
Yeah.
where the biggest wallet wins. And so from that side, I think that's what opened the door. I think that's why also the market was so spooked by it was all of these AI beneficiaries. One, big moats, big pocketbooks, and then horsepower, right? Well, if horsepower is needed 90% less than we anticipated, which that's what some of the numbers were getting thrown out there, it changes everything. It changes everything about who's going to be able to do what, how quickly they're going to be able to deploy. Can somebody actually disrupt? These are the kinds of things that happen in technological revolutions, is that usually it's not the incumbents that take the entirety, right? Usually there's a new entrant, and this might be it. This might also be absolute bunk, right?
Yeah, that's the other thing. We
like
don't
you
know
said
for
before,
sure.
is this is a Chinese company that we kind of knew very, very little about. I would say we still know very, very little about. The technology could absolutely be, this is junk.
Or
we
it
have to
doesn't
be prepared for
scale
that
or
too.
whatever the case may be. Right?
So understanding that this is not even, I mean, this is the second batter of the first inning, right?
Yep.
If we want to use a baseball analogy, right? We have to figure this out and they have to see. But I think it does open the door to saying, are there more efficient ways to do this? Which I think, has largely
That's
been
always been our case, right? We've always talked about it. Eventually, all these guys doing nuclear power, signing these long-term contracts. That's power. There'll be something more efficient. And that's what we worried with NVIDIA, that, if you find something more efficient, less power, that can do it just as well, that's probably going to be the option. Maybe that's what, DeepSeek's found here.
Well,
We'll
talking
find
about
out.
the black box, so I saw, and I didn't see the actual quote, but there was a headline circulating, and it was Alexander Wang. He's the youngest billionaire founder of Scale AI. But there's a ban on NVIDIA chips to China.
Yep.
So he was speculating that they didn't put any NVIDIA chips into their cost because they can't talk about it because they're not supposed to have them. But he was predicting that they probably have upwards of 50,000.
50,000 number I saw too, yeah.
50,000 H100 NVIDIA GPUs, which means their cost is much higher than $5 million.
Yeah. But how much is that compared to Claude, OpenAI, and all that stuff, Anthropic?
Less.
Like substantially, like 50. When you throw 50,000 out there, it sounds like a lot, right? But if they're using 5 million, it's a very different story.
I think what was Meta? Meta was going to order, was it a 200,000?
250,000.
250,000. So 250,000.
So I think it's significant. And the other thing is that with that cost of 95% cheaper, was a lot of the R&D going into it wasn't captured.
Included.
Yeah. So it's
the year and a half that preluded the model was not in the cost of building the model.
So either way, to your point, I think sounds like it is going to be cheaper, but is it 95% cheaper? Probably not. So now people are wrestling with how much are these NVIDIA chips that you weren't supposed to have? Did you have 50,000 of them? Are you using the H800, which is the old version? And so
and supposedly their open source is still kind of a black box.
Yeah. I think we're nitpicking at the smaller story here, though. I think the bigger story is now everybody and their mother are going to be like, can we do this on a cheaper basis rather than just saying, how much more expensive how much more can Zuckerberg throw out there? He threw 65 billion out there, right?
Yeah.
Well, now I think the mentality shifted. I think that's what the biggest story of this is going to be is, can I do this same thing for 30% of the cost? And especially smaller companies, I think they're going to come out and say, can I do something that's similar to this and go after these guys who have these big pocketbooks because I can do this on a scaled basis that isn't quite as expensive as I thought it was going to be? I think that's the bigger story. I think that's where you could see the massive amount of disruption. Yeah. And that's where I'll be interested in seeing how this story unfolds from that.
Yeah. Lisa, what are your thoughts on?
I mean, to start with, like the DeepSeek thing, like, I think it's always easy to rebuild something or build on a base of something else rather than to completely invent it out of the blue. And we do not know yet, as the same thing that is out there is like, did it really cost 6 million, or was it probably much more expensive than that? They did not account for all the failures before they came out with that one that kind of is close to ChatGPT yet. So we do not know that, and we do not also know how much they used ChatGPT or all the technology that was already out there to build their platform on top of that. So again, it's always easier to rebuild something rather than kind of really innovate something on the green field. But it also, I think, shows that not the first adopters are always the ones who win in the end. And I think what kind of it opened up, and you said it, Jeremy, that it's like it's the barrier of entry, I think, is much lower now, or that the thinking has shifted, and there can be more businesses now entering the stage, which should help broaden out the technology concentration, which is good in the end.
I think so.
That's really
because
good,
there's-
actually. That's
yeah,
the main.
there's
I think that's the
more,
main takeaway there.
Yeah, more companies entering the stage, more companies jumping on that and trying to be efficient and not just the power out there. And yeah, that's beneficial for investors and for the whole market. Yeah, it shows that not the big boys are necessarily the winners in the end.
Well, let me ask you guys this. So, okay, so let's say there are more entrants. Maybe the cost of the model gets a little bit cheaper. So, what do you think the hyperscalers do? Do they scale back and readjust their models to be similar to what DeepSeek is doing, and in the end creates a cheaper model for them and they don't have to spend as much CapEx? Or do you think they spend even more because new entrants are coming in, so they try to stay ahead of the curve, if you will?
No, I think it's the former, in
Yep.
my opinion. They'll look for cheaper ways to do it. And we had talked about this repeatedly with NVIDIA, right? Is that at some point, these guys are going to come, they're just going to get there and they're going to be like, "Well, I bought every chip I can buy. Now I got to figure out how to make this thing work for me." And maybe this is it. Maybe not. Maybe we're going to find out DeepSeek was terrible. Its construction was awful. And we got to spend a ton of money to do it. It's entirely possible that that's where this ends up. But it's also now much, in my opinion, the probability is much higher now for them to say, how can I do this cheaper? How can I do what I want to do? And I think the better thing for me is, they're not, as Lisa said, I don't think they're the innovators at this point anymore, right? They're kind of the protectors. I'd like to see the innovators come in and give us something that actually is useful, right? And saying, I'm going to change behavior because I have a better idea. And now it's not costing me $1 billion plus to implement this idea. That's what I'd like to see. And so from that side, I think the hyperscalers, if you will, I think their goal will be now to shift to saying, I at least have to look into this rather than just saying I'm throwing money at it. Can I do this on a cheaper basis? And I think that's where all their heads of state right now are going to each other and saying, IT guy, can we do this? Because if we don't, we will be gone.
Yep.
And that's, they have to pay a lot of attention to that.
Yeah, I think it's a developing space. I think their CapEx, like I think Meta just came out and said they're just spending 60 to 65 billion. I think that number could go down, which would be a good thing. Then they can be more efficient. We'll push on IT. Can we do it more efficiently? What are the other systems? But I do think they'll have some component that they're still going to spend a lot because it's developing yet. I mean, there may be, DeepSeek came in. This is the part of inference versus testing and all these different parts of AI that they can't get to. Maybe that works for part of it, but maybe not for all of it. So I do think their CapEx will still remain elevated, but I think directionally now we're peaked, and I think we're going down the other side of things. So I like the fact that other companies can get in there. The barrier entry is a lot lower potentially, which that means a lot more software companies can, have AI, which then has some killer application. That's what we've been waiting for, right?
I still haven't seen it.
We still haven't seen it. It's been, AI is great. It's like a Google search or Gemini,
all these
or whoever.
AI applications are just ChatGPT.
Has it changed any of our lives here yet? It's, that's cool. You can learn at a faster pace. And I think, it's where behind the scenes, again, Lisa, you brought this up before, as I think medical breakthroughs. I think that's where actually the cool stuff will lie at some point. But from my side, there hasn't been a behavior shift change yet, right? It's been a little bit of difference, a little bit of advancement. Oh, I may have a cool assistant down the road that does things for me, but I'm still waiting for the behavior change. That's the big change. And I haven't seen it yet.
No, I think that's where you can get in healthcare when you start getting these large language models. If you can get them cheaper, you get more data through it more efficiently, then all of a sudden you can study cancer, different indications. And you've had a lot of technology guys on TV last few days talking. Reid Hoffman was out there this morning talking about cancer as an area. I think there's a big potential of just, being able to analyze it, maybe target certain parts of it a lot better. I think that's where AI can change lives and make a lot of difference.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit, it will probably, the shift now in thinking will probably help in developing things faster, because more companies joining the stage and in different areas are innovating, doing it cheaper. So I think that will help in the end to bring out useful stuff faster. And I also think to the discussion, if they will lower their capex, I think they have to, because by now investors were like still very in a wait and see approach. But we saw that they also already got antsy a little bit, because they were told the last few reports, hey, we need to spend I don't know how much more money and for I don't know how longer that this will kind of get a return. And investors were like, okay, this was the baseline, right? It cost a lot, nobody knows. It will take a lot of time, nobody knows, but they were fine with it. But now,
but there hasn't been any return on it, right?
Right.
So that's where people are.
But what we saw over the last few earnings reports already saw, like, investors getting a little bit antsy, wanting a little bit more argumentation. Hey, where are we with that? How much more do we need? So there was already, I think, a shift happening. They needed to be a little bit more, argue a little bit better. Okay, what are we actually doing here? And when do we actually think this will take off? And I think this shift kind of was fastened a little bit with that development yet, because now investors are like, okay, like what we already thought is really now the case, right? So it's really now cheaper possible. So get your things together and do a little bit more on the efficiency side, which I think there was already a shift to it, just from pure brain power to more efficiency. I think now this is also this was a little bit fast tracked with that development yet.
Yeah, it's interesting. I would say, I don't think that shift had happened yet, because the stock, look at the stocks, right? You know, Zuckerberg comes out, says they're spending $65 billion, and the stock went up. I think that conversation is now in hyperdrive, right? Because they're going to say now for certain, what are we looking at? Why are you spending so much? Why can they do this and you can't? I think you're going to get a lot more of that going forward.
Yeah.
I have a little bit of a different opinion than you guys.
Cool.
So I think, my opinion is that these big hyperscalers are going to continue to spend more and more on chips and AI.
You think Zuck's number is going to 70 billion?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do. And the reason for that is, I think, they will create efficiencies in their models similar to how DeepSeek did it, right? And rather than turning on all trillion nodes on their model, they'll call the experts and only turn on a third of them, right? That creates some energy efficiency. I think they will do that, but I think they'll want to continue to hold their moat, number one. So they'll continue to spend on research, continue to spend on updating models, new models, expand from 1 trillion to 1.5 to 2 trillion nodes that they're going to train the models on. And then also, just as far as pure advancement, right? We heard DeepSeek is theoretically using cheaper chips. If these companies want to continue to push AI forward and get to AGI, artificial general intelligence, and anything past that, you're going to need the best of the best chips and the fastest of the fastest chips. You're not going to need you can't just have a computer gaming chip to continue advancing AI. So my opinion is that DeepSeek built a new model that created efficiencies, but they didn't really advance anything besides creating the energy efficiency and on a lesser chip. So in order to move AI forward, you're going to need the NVIDIA GPUs, and these companies are just going to have to continue to spend on it if they want to continue to advance the field.
Yeah, that's why I think you're right on
That's
there.
a good
Continue
point,
to spend, but I think we've hit peak. So I think there's enough kind of low hanging fruit that they can, push that low AI, not forward, that can discount it. And then I think that's why I don't think these budgets are going to, that 65 is going to 40 either.
No.
I think it's maybe around that 65, maybe it goes down. I think that does go down a little bit just directionally, but I think you're right, to get to that next level, you're still spending a lot of money.
Yeah.
But if it's as efficient as what DeepSeek says, there's a good chunk of AI you don't need to be spending that 65, right?
Yeah.
You can that piece of that budget can maybe be 20 billion, then that 40 billion could be towards this pushing AI forward. So that's where I think it is. And I guess the biggest question that we have and the market has is the impact on stocks. I mean, you guys have any thoughts on that?
My next question.
Yeah, I'll let you guys delve into that and I'll jump in.
Just give me your take on impact for the markets. Because NVIDIA is kind of the driver. Everybody looks at NVIDIA to where the market's going, basically, or has been for the last 18 months. So does this mean the market can't go anywhere?
Oh, I'll start. No, absolutely not. We saw it.
We saw it.
Mhm.
Yeah.
We got pure evidence of it that, NVIDIA, Broadcom, all those things were down 20%. The money didn't leave the market. It just shifted other way,
Yeah.
Which is fantastic, by the way.
Exactly. If that works out, phenomenal. Usually doesn't work out perfectly.
Yeah.
But we'll see if that continues. But on a one-day shift, we absolutely saw that it's possible. So from that side, AI has been the big driver of growth, but these companies are growing outside of that, right? Because AI is not really driving revenue that much. It's honestly driving much more expenses. So if their revenue continues to go up and their expenses go down, the earnings growth actually could be better. So from that side, you could actually see the market continue to work. What I would say is that you might see a dramatic acceleration of the broadening out. That's entirely possible. With that said, I think NVIDIA's numbers are still going to be rock star this quarter, right? I mean, all of that spend is already done, and they probably still have a pretty decent roadmap of spend going forward. The question to me is, what are investors going to be willing to pay, especially for that company, about the revenue growth if we're in deceleration mode? Because they're the most affected by that.
Yeah, I agree. The hardware semi guys, I think they're in the crosshairs. We talked about this for the last several months. There'll be a point when something's a little more efficient or cheaper, faster, and I think we're there now. So then now the prices NVIDIA has been getting for their chips probably won't for the next quarter or two. They're probably still fine, right? Because everything's still in the queue. Everybody's still kind of the gray area here. But when you look out 6 months to a year, my guess is their pricing will be going down, which means their gross margins are going down, which means your EPS go down. And I think the stock, and that's kind of why, positioning wise, we've been, as a whole, been selling it down a little bit. We're under relative to our benchmark, and I think that's the right place to be. So I think they're in the crosshairs. The one area I think is more in the crosshairs is all the spend that was going on to these energy efficiency issues, like all these nuclear stocks that were home runs, just based, these 10-year plans, Microsoft with, these different signing up with nuclear plants. I think those companies, if it's truly that 95% more efficient,
even if it's 40%,
even 40, even 30%, whatever the number
it
is,
just changes the trajectory of that power need so much,
and the pricing that they're getting for, right? The demand, that's where
you and I talked about this in a side conversation. But man, I'd be sweating aggressively if I were those power dudes right now, because their phone probably stopped ringing. Hey, I'm getting calls from Google, I'm getting calls from Meta, I'm getting calls from Amazon. This is cool. I never did this before. Those calls could dry up real fast. You're going to have to be very, very, very careful that if all of a sudden everything is 40% more efficient, it just completely changes the dynamic for the power needs that are expected out there right now.
Which is good for the U.S. consumer, right? So all this supposedly drag that was coming onto these utility companies, and stocks were working very well. We've been very cautious on saying these are long-term deals, and any change in this, in my mind, is an absolute game changer for that space. I think these utilities stocks were working very well. I think that's not going to be the case. Like Jeremy said, these people calling, they're not calling anymore. They may not need to. And it's like, okay, there's going to be some extra demand on the grid, but it won't be what people were expecting.
Yeah. Well, to your point, Jeremy, so on Monday, the equal weight S&P was down, I think, 8 basis points.
Yeah, it's tiny.
Versus the market. I don't even know what the market finished down on Monday.
1.5%, I think.
Yeah, because it rallied at the end.
Yep.
So, I mean, you've got 8 basis points versus 1.5.
Yeah, the NASDAQ was down 3 that day, right?
NASDAQ was 3.
Yeah. So, and also when we did, I think it was 3 episodes ago where we talked about was that 2 where I tried to back you into estimates?
I don't know.
We talked about a broad.
Jeremy's
tried to forget all about that already.
But our call was for AI to continue to work, but a broadening out of AI. And we saw that, whether that was Salesforce, CrowdStrike, some of these software names that aren't tied to a specific model or a specific chip company, those names were working very well the last couple of days.
Yeah. Lisa, you called that one, right? Didn't you call out for the broadening?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I think to that point of the broadening, I think markets still can continue to do well, because we saw, like, on Monday, it was really concentrated in some companies. And even Amazon, for example, who is big in AI as well, did not see that sell-off because they have other lines of business. So it was really, really concentrated, not just generally Mag 7 or whatnot. And again, like, if when more like the barrier of entry has shifted a little bit now, and when more entrants are coming and joining the stage, that should help with the broadening as well within the tech sector. So I think that is a positive.
Well, so here's devil's advocate. I hear you guys saying market can keep doing well, but Monday the market was down 1.5%.
Then Tuesday, the market was up almost 1%, right? See, it's a pretty big bump for that big
Right.
of news.
So,
for that big of
that's what I'm
news,
saying. So if these chip guys don't work, can the market work?
Well, but if the tech sector broadens out with more entrants in that space, that should help as well.
I mean, obviously with Nvidia being
you might see
6-7%, Apple being 6-7%, if those aren't actually, if they're going down 20% a day, that's an issue.
Yeah. But that's what I mean. So we maybe we see the broadening out. We saw it broadening out on Monday, right? The equal weight was down 8 basis points, but the market was down.
Yeah.
Right. So can the market work with these guys not working?
I mean, again, I think so. Just from that's the shock factor, right? Is we started reading about something that completely may have changed the game over the weekend. There was the shock factor in there, right? Is that, and then the repivoting. I don't know if we're going to have a secondary wave of that massive amount of shock factor, to where again the market, if you're taking, it's like, okay, I can broaden out because all of a sudden healthcare companies are growing at 8, 9, 10%, and they're trading at 10-year relatively low valuations, and it's 10% of the market. If that gets lifted up to 15, while those come down, it could still work. Is it, as I said before, though, I couched it myself a little bit and saying that's being, you're kind of threading a needle there, right? Usually these kinds of disruptions usually lead to market declines, right? So I would lean probably, if you were to, again, give me the prediction, give me Jeremy's prediction over here. I think if those things don't work, I don't know if the market can work. I don't know if it will work.
It'll be a stock picker's market.
I think if AI gets that much cheaper for companies, look how efficiency all companies can be, right? If you have some kind of component of AI that's easy to implement, you have some software solution that can replace, whether it's material costs or people costs, that those companies can actually do a lot better. And I think that could more than offset the fact.
It's got to be long term, though, right? I mean, they can't do that.
No, can't do it immediately. But I don't think, again, to our point, I don't think Nvidia's numbers are dropping immediately either, right? I think that's, but the stocks will discount going forward, right? We'll look out a year and saying, oh yeah, margins are coming down for Nvidia. Let's put those dollars somewhere else. Oh, and by the way, for this healthcare company, Medtronic, Abbott, whoever, that we're implementing AI that's going to help that part of our business go up faster. I think that's where you can see that transition happening a little bit. So again, it's certainly a lot easier when the big guys are working.
Yeah.
And not going down 15%. But
yeah,
Meta was up. I think Google was barely down.
Microsoft
was barely down.
I mean,
Apple was up. So I mean, there was some offsets to Nvidia.
Yeah.
So I think also, like to Jeremy's point, I think that was more a shock. That is not. It was an overreaction. What we already saw the next day, that was an overreaction. So that really was not that justified, I would say. And I mean, just a fun fact, like the 600 billion that Nvidia lost on Monday. It kind of sounds like a number, but that's actually a larger than the market value of Exxon, Costco, United Health. And when you visualize it like that a little bit, then it's like, oh wow, this
Seismic.
is sizable companies that one company just lost in market value. So I think it's just
Well, there was I think someone put out a chart of the last 10 or 15 largest market cap losses by size.
In second place is also Nvidia.
No, all 10 or 15 of them were Nvidia.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Well, they went from largest market cap to the third in one day.
Yeah.
That's 600 million they lost in
Okay,
market cap.
I'll put you all on the spot now. If you didn't own it right now, would you buy it?
Yes.
Nvidia. Yes?
Yes.
No.
I wouldn't.
Wow. That's 2 against 2. Tiebreaker.
I think there is, I don't want to say a brick wall coming, but I don't know what's softer than a brick wall. that still hurts.
Yeah.
I think it's coming. I do believe
Tree,
that
maybe.
this, yeah, exactly, yeah.
Run to a tree.
Those slingshot things, right? Where you go backwards. I think that this, again, I don't think it's this quarter. I think the numbers are going to be fine for that. I think we may be on the precipice of an efficiency explosion, which Nvidia will not play in.
That's fair.
Yeah, I think the hardware guys the semi is going to be under a little pressure. Again, I think that energy guys will be a lot more pressure. And then I think we'll see the benefits kind of start broadening out.
I never owned those in the first place.
Yeah, we didn't either. And like I said, we've been, how you manage one of the portfolios, it looks a lot like the S&P 500. I'm underweight those semis, but I would even, I'm considering maybe potentially selling a little bit more to the point. I think this quarter is probably fine. Next quarter is fine. But at some point in time, there's going to be a little bit more pain, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, this is about to happen, right? Because they can't grow like that forever. At some point, there must be a deceleration. Or
We're
at
gonna find
least
out.
CapEx can't stay that high, I don't think.
So let me ask you one more question before we wrap this thing up. So on Monday, we talked about the chips and the energy guys being down. One thing we didn't talk about was Microsoft, Meta, Apple. Those companies were up, right? Was that the market's way of saying we expect CapEx to be reduced?
Well, I don't think Microsoft was. I think Microsoft is down, but
not that much.
Not the 17% that everything else was. Yeah.
We'll say relatively flat compared to the
Okay. Yeah. Compared to the epicenter, it was nowhere near. Got it.
So was that the market's way of saying we expect these guys to cut CapEx and become more efficient? Or what was the market signaling, do you think, of why, especially on a Meta was up, what, 2.5%, 3%?
Yeah.
So like what was the market saying there?
Oh, well, I think the market was had its hair on fire a little bit.
Yeah.
Market might not have been saying anything other than, but I think what I did see was chips are going to feel this pain first. If they're right, if DeepSeek is actually the way things are going to go, chips are going to feel it first. That's what we're going to hit on hardest. We'll see what these guys do because CapEx, Microsoft has plenty, Amazon has plenty of lines of business. You're still going to need hyperscaling kind of things. They just may have less CapEx need going forward. So it may be beneficial. I don't know if there was that level of rationality in the market during that day. I think it was just more my hair's on fire and I'm just going to, program trading just kind of messed everything up outside of we're selling chips right now.
Yeah.
I think so too. I think to your point is like, if there was rationality, then it was, okay, you have other lines of business. You're okay for now.
Yeah. You're not at the epicenter of damage.
You're not just that. Yeah.
No, I think they can be more efficient. So I think if your CapEx for that Meta example, that's 60, 65 can go down. That's less money they spend. They can put somewhere else. I also think a big component of their business is going to be driven by AI. So if you can make AI more efficient, more easier to use, more applications, I think that's positive for them. Also positive for a lot of other companies.
Right.
So I think that's kind of what they're kind of separating that side of things. The semis, the anything kind of power, nuclear kind of any companies that fed into that really they were down 15 to 30%. Yeah. And then all of a sudden, oh, by the way, there could be a lot of their software names are up. CRM was the name, Salesforce, ServiceNow. Those are names that we own. They're like, oh man, maybe AI is going to be, instead of us having to pay so much for this AI, it's going to be a lot cheaper and it's going to make our business a lot more efficient.
Yeah. All right. We'll leave it there. That was enough talk about DeepSeek.
Good stuff, Tyler.
But if you like what we talked about today, give us a like and subscribe. And then otherwise, we'll see you guys next week.